Welcome to Study Buddy, meditation philosophy for the heart of your practice. This is a live online discussion of ancient yogic texts amongst meditation practitioners in the Shambhavananda Yoga tradition. My name is Acharya Satyam, a resident teacher at Konalani Yoga Ashram in Hawaii, and I welcome you with love and respect. So I'd like to begin today's class by actually looking back at our work from last week and just to see if there's anything people want to share about their experience with it, or we can just move on to new material. But I did want to take a minute to recap a little bit of our work because it really sort of hit home for me, and it was really a practical, approach to our practice. So we talked about the teaching, which you're seeing here. The Guru Gita verse that exemplifies the teaching of last week was, indeed, this too is Shiva. And, it's sort of a maxim of our practice that we hear and we say and we read and we chant, and occasionally we have the opportunity to practice. The idea is that though there are many forms around us, manifestations of Shiva, we can always rest assured that everything we're encountering, as Swami Vijnana put it on the back of his book, it should be taken in a state of perfection. It really is all Shiva. And so the analogy that we were given last week by the text was this one. Because, for instance, when there is fire, its energy can be for burning, cooking, or lighting a room. All these energies are owned by fire, but those energies, whether it's lightning, giving light, burning, or heating, they're undifferentiated with fire. These energies are not different from fire. It is just to enter into that state of fire, to put a kettle on the flame, so to speak. And it continues, in the same way, the path of Shakti is to enter the state of Shiva. So we've got all these different manifestations of Shiva all around us, which could be very externalizing. It could be the opposite of what it's intended to be. It could draw you out into all these different forms. But when we apply our practice, according to the sutras and the tantras and the teachings, all of those forms have the capacity to pull you right back to this state of being. This is the essence of the Shambhavi Mudra. This is really the essence of, Rudi's teachings of using your life for growth. It's going to be the essence of the dharanas when we're given these supposedly horizontal paths that take us vertically. And so we talked about this and even anticipated when in our life does it feel hard to remember that this too is Shiva. We had, the example given of when a crazy driver sort of cuts you off, it's pretty hard to be like, oh yeah, that's Shiva doing this really unconscious activity. Or when there are a couple of people said, when I'm having trouble waking up in the morning, even, to get to my cushion, to get to my seat, it's hard to be like, oh yeah, this feeling that I'm having, this is also Shiva. And so there were sort of instances we were anticipating a little bit. This was a couple of weeks ago, and we've had so much, happen since. But take a moment and just sort of reflect back. And we don't have to spend time here in discussion if it doesn't prove to be, happening. But I want to give the space in case anybody wants to share about their experience of this teaching, or even just thoughts and reflections on it that are coming up for you right now. And I'm sorry if I just missed a hand, but go for it again. Okay. Yeah, Marcella. Let's double check the audio is good. Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, I thought that this was really cool, especially when you were talking about, just bringing it into like a situation and just saying, this too is Shiva, and just kind of saying that over and over to yourself, because that like really stuck with me. And I noticed myself, like, the first time I tried it, I was like, oh, this feels like so, like, it's so like I'm doing something so external and I can't even like begin to see how this relates. And then like the next time I tried it, I said it over and over and over again, and it was like, yeah, those first few times I was like, oh yeah, this is like feels so strange. And then like as I said it over and over and over again some more, it was like it just brought it to like this whole other level where I was like, oh wow, like I can really feel how this does relate. And it was something that I just kept coming back to throughout that week after we had that class. Yeah, it just kind of kept popping up into my head to say this too is Shiva. So that was really kind of fun, natural way that it popped up.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's really inspiring. I definitely just want to piggyback on that and saying that for me, yeah, you nailed it by saying it doesn't make sense if you just say it once. It's almost like saying Om Namah Shivaya and expecting to have the benefits of mantra practice just sort of flow into you, which, could happen. But generally, you got to repeat it, hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands, of times. And then the experience changes. And I think you nailed it with this one, because when we're encountering something really challenging, I mean, we're literally coming up against a wall, and you don't get through a wall by just sort of pressing on it once, or scraping at it once. It really is it takes this repetitive, because every moment that tension is sort of reforming, and then we have to sort of work with it in that moment, and then it reforms again, and then you work with it again, and it reforms again, and work with it, that the way that manifestation is described in that pulsation, that spanda. So yeah it takes like repetitions to even feel what it is that's occurring. So thank you for bringing that to light. I think I saw Tashi's hand and then Yogita. Fun.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So with this, what I thought about with this is, well, once a week, like for my day off, we'll go like rock climbing. And right now we're like going, rock climbing at the gym. And you see all the holds, and I feel like there's always that one hold on a challenging route that's like, it's like, oh God, how do I use this hold? It's like some little thing, and you're just like, can hardly grab that. I really don't like that hold. Can I just not use it? And I find that that hold is also Shiva, and it's also like it's an important part of the path up the route. So I think like the metaphor that I'm seeing right now is for me that all of these feelings and tensions and situations, like there's easy ones that help you get up, and then there's hard ones that you have to like chew on a little bit and learn how to use through skill and precision of movement. And then there's all variety of different kinds of holds. So I think the hard ones help us learn how to be dynamic in a situation. So I think for me, it's all like, that's all Shiva, or that's all like part of the path up. And like using everything to go up is the easiest way to get to the top.
Thanks, Tashi. That was like a miniature presentation. That was beautiful. Thank you. That was so helpful. Analogy, unpacked it, related it back. Way to go. That was just so nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think the analogy that you give is so fitting because I'm just going to bump your picture up so I can actually see it. There you go. Is so fitting because it's like this thing you're doing is challenging, and it's fun because it's challenging. And then you encounter something that's just a little more challenging than you want it to be, and you're like, no, not this. It's like we need challenge to have fun. But we're like, it's so hard for us to be like, that's a little too I want my fun to be exactly like this, but in reality that would get boring, and then we'd be equally unchallenged. And it's just a really helpful analogy, that one in particular, because it really shows that like we need fiber, we need these challenges to even experience this bliss, and if we can just just shift our perspective a little bit, which we all are. Like, we're in this room because literally we are figuring this out, every day a little bit through practice to encounter our challenges a little bit differently than our mind might react to them. That another realm opens up, and as you would also be able to use in that analogy, it's just because you understand that doesn't mean you can climb up the wall. Like, you can understand that and be like, yeah, this is going to be a little harder than I think it's going to be. Doesn't mean you can do it. And that's another fascinating part about this process, is that you can understand it, you can be on board, and it still takes practice and repetition because the challenge is so real. Like, the thing that gets, that Marcella was repeating this too, is Shiva too, is uniquely challenging for her. And then I have this uniquely different challenging situation, and they're so utterly real that there's no amount of thinking that can ever change the chemistry of the situation. And so it's like we have to like have this. I think that's where the warrior spirit comes in, the spiritual warrior, where you are literally saying, I will be challenged, I will not always be victorious, but this is the path to growth. And like, you still proceed. And we're not usually in this, like, you're not climbing, you're not free soloing here. You know what I mean? It's like there's ropes there to catch us. This isn't a truly warrior kind of setting, and doesn't need to be. And that's sort of, one of those things that we forget about when we watch all the shows about these epic battles, that really this can't occur in a day-to-day environment. Thanks, Tashi.
Thanks. Yeah, I really like what you said about that. That was cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
And it's like the rope is like it's like the grace or something. It's like the support of the practice. So falling is like, I failed, but it's also, it's terrifying sometimes when you fall. And then, but then you can just, because of the rope, you stay a little bit around that level and you just try again.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny how even when you know there's a rope, it's still scary. And we're sitting there in our life, we're like, we know this is just a thing that I'm going through. This is not the end of the world, but it still feels so hard to do something like just acknowledge, like, this is occurring and within the state of perfection. This is Shiva. Like, it's just still scary to do that. Scary is a weird word to relate to in that setting, but the idea is there. Yogita had your hand up, and then Radharani looks like she's next.
Okay. Well, I guess the way I relate to Shiva is that Shiva created everything, and then Shiva didn't go away. That Shiva is in everything, but and sometimes though it's all covered up by all my tension and stuff. But Shiva, because it's hard to look at some people, it's hard for me to see that that glass is Shiva, but we know that Shiva is in everything. I don't know. What I was saying.
Yeah,
I can understand.
Okay, I can work with that. I like that you brought up the point that Shiva created everything, and it's not like Shiva's not there anymore. Like, we might create something and walk away, but that it's actually created. It is Shiva, and that the only thing is there's a layer of Maya, and I'm speaking from the text. I don't want to sound like, oh, the only thing keeping us from seeing Shiva is illusion. But according to the text, that's it. It's not like Shiva created this thing that's external to Shiva, and that's what we're living in. And we just have to remember, oh, Shiva made this thing. It's like, no, this is literally Shiva, like all of it. And I think sometimes when we try to relate to like objects in the room, I think we have to understand that there's because there's no there might not be a lot of like tension between you and that object per se. And so sometimes you can be like, well, I don't really feel it. And it's like, no, it's going to be sort of a subtler sensation, just like how you feel this potential energy a lot more in certain situations than others. And how sometimes it can be hard to feel your heart when you're just sort of cruising through your day, but then it can be weirdly easier to access your practice when things get challenging. It's interesting. So it's like when we look around the room, we're like, I don't know. I look at this glass of water and I'm like, okay, so that's Shiva. Cool. I don't know what, if that really, and it's like, well, relate to it at the level that it relates to you. Like you can at least view these objects in the room and you can at least see them objectively. Like you can see them within the space that they're in. And you sort of have a more whole experience of that object. Like you can just sort of look around your room and you can pick out one. And then you sort of see it and you breathe while you see it. And you like see the whole room and it. And that's pretty special, like that's you're seeing the part and the whole. So that might be one way of relating to that really simple approach that often comes up when we're describing this. Well, I hope that was helpful. Radharani, did you want to chime in?
Well, for me, this is kind of like, it makes me, this concept of everything being Shiva, as Tashi's, or are you, sorry, actually, as you said after Tashi shared, it's like you can understand it, but I feel like there's some part of me, the resistance is so big, or maybe that duality is so strong that I'm actually having a lot of trouble with it.
Yeah.
Like I have a lot of, it's like I'm having a tantrum against it. It's like, part of me is just can't deal with it. And I just want to can rebel against it. It's weird. There are few things in the practice that I feel bring a lot of conflict in me, and this does. Like, I understand the concept. I understand what is supposed to be happening. But even if I repeated this situation is Shiva, I'm rebelling against it. And I think it's just that very crystallized duality that I can pass, right? Which is part of the path, part of the process. I understand that. But it's interesting that it just brought a lot of conflict and rebellion inside of me. It's like, there's no way I can do this kind of thing. So I find that interesting that my resistance just brought that out.
Yeah. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think there could be individuals here right now or listening to this podcast or watching this video later that silently feel that. And they're like, I'm not supposed to feel that. And it's like, no, that's also Shiva, like that resistance to this concept. And I also think that this concept can sometimes seem a little bit like you're sort of blowing off everything. Like you're like, oh, sure, I can just say this and magically, somehow I'm spiritual or somehow this is working. Yeah, that is, true. That's sort of like, that's the level. If you took it at the level of the mind, it would be sort of an annoying concept. It would be sort of a concept that seems to be like, oh, I can get all the way to the mountaintop with just this one little phrase. Not true. That doesn't happen, kind of. But I think if you relate to it as a practitioner and you start to ask yourself, what am I doing? What is occurring in this setting? I feel tension right now. And again, tension is essential and natural. Like it's not a negative. We know that. I feel tension right now. What is this? do I not think that this situation, like, you start to grapple, if you grapple with your tension a little bit and just be like, what's happening right now? Like this person is really upsetting me. And I honestly don't think they're Shiva. Like you can just, you just sort of feel like that. You're just like, this person is upsetting. They're being unconscious. I'm sort of thinking of like settings that like stir me up. Nobody in this room, nothing at the ashram. It's just like, it's this other thing, that I reference sometimes. But, you're just sitting there like, and you literally will say, like, this one time, it's not true. This isn't Shiva. That's how you feel. And then if you like, well, in my experience of this teaching, this too is Shiva, like Marcella said. And I'm like, no, this too is Shiva. Nope. This too is Shiva. This too is Shiva. And for me, I just got a little bit of, it's like my breath could finally squeak through to my heart after a few of these. It's like it just cracks the door open. It's just a technique. It's not the solution. It just cracks the door so that my mechanism, my practice could start moving, because it was locked shut, and so this was just like one way in for me, but by no means like encapsulate my entire practice. It was like a facilitator. So that's how I can relate to this practice without being sort of like rebelling against it as if it's somehow going to solve all my problems. Well, oh, Marcella, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say too that like something that kind of helps me sometimes to kind of get that like breaking up and like of the tension a little bit, if I feel like I can't just like work with it inside myself, is to do like the free writing exercise and to kind of work with it that way a little bit. And just as I just like write, just completely freely, not controlling it, not like thinking about it too much, I usually end up getting to some kind of a place of more clarity, because I feel like if I write about like something that I'm upset about with a lot of like control over the writing, it just keeps building like the tension, versus if I am just letting myself just free write about it, it kind of like naturally gets somewhere. Even if it's just a little bit, it like kind of just begins to like get through, like you were saying.
Nice. And just to expand that possibility for all, in case any of us maybe aren't like writers per se, or don't consider that to be a modality that we would use, any artistic medium, or even just going for a walk, but like not stopping, like finding a pace and just sticking with it, even for that same amount of time. Radharani's a musician, so I'm sure that like if she sat down and just played music, not a song she necessarily knows or doesn't know, but just force herself to just play, because as Patanjali says in his Yoga Sutras, when you're experiencing like heavy samskaric patterns and the woe, you're in the throes of it. He said you can focus your attention on anything, and if you can keep your attention focused, you will break through. And of course, there's even more specific practices, but at its core, writing for 10 straight minutes and not, letting yourself sort of stop and wallow in it, and just writing or whatever it might be, as an example of that. And I think Marcella, I feel that way about writing too. And I also feel that way about philosophy and things like that. And I think it's up to each individual to just know, like, what's your way in, and then to use it. So thanks for sort of expanding this concept and making it very practical, Marcella. That was cool. Well, thanks everyone for that hearty discussion on this too is Shiva. That was wonderful. So thank you. That was just really great to hear from everyone. We have more material to go, but we're going to take our time and do a little tension release practice between sessions. So you can bring the fingertips down and to the floor. I'll guide it a little, but if you're good with the practice, proceed. And so focusing on the breath here, really using the pranayama gently but effectively, breathing in slowly through the nose, really slowing that down so you feel the whole 5 to 7 or maybe 10 seconds of inhale, bringing in some fresh, clear prana to the heart. And then pausing, holding the breath in that space of the heart, allowing the prana to really break free all the crystallization that just naturally accumulates. No strain here, but that pause should feel expansive. And then slowly releasing, breathing out through the nose and simultaneously visualizing that smoky or ashy tension pouring out of the heart, down the arms and out the palms and fingertips. So take your time with that pranayama and visualization. And the next time you're at the holding the breath in the heart, remember you can always add the wish. I deeply wish to release all negative psychic tension. After your next exhale, you can flick out the fingertips and wipe off the arms. And before we go into this new material, I want to get the ball rolling inwardly with a little meditation that will utilize the material. It just takes maybe a minute here. So wherever you're at, you can look at a Murti of some kind that's around you or some sacred image. And, a sacred image, again, can be a variety of things. And as you're looking at that image, soften your gaze like we do when we're doing open-eyed meditation, a nice soft gaze, not staring. And I want you to just sort of notice what's occurring within you. And it's totally cool if you need to like pivot and look behind you or at a different part of the room. I understand that I sort of pulled this one out on you. So notice that you're looking out through your eyes, but you're simultaneously feeling your breath, feeling your seat, and eventually feeling your heart while you are gazing externally. Now, we know this, and you can continue as I'm talking. This is a practice. This is not something you can just decide to do, that the mind will constantly float thoughts by you. And even though our eyes are open, we can actually look at a thought and be distracted from this inward half of the equation. And so we practice letting go of the thoughts. And it's a really fundamental practice for us, this ability to gaze upon a sacred image and to practice feeling inwardly while we do that. It's so common, we might take it for granted. But this is the foundation of the Shambhavi Mudra. And in our text we're about to read, Shiva gives the analogy that All of manifestation is the face of Shiva in the form of Shakti. So whatever you're looking at, this is an example of Shakti, a manifestation of Shiva. And so as you gaze upon this external image, you try to breathe very gently into your heart. And in that moment, you are merging Shiva and Shakti. You are gazing upon Shakti while feeling Shiva. This union is at the heart of the Vijnana Bhairava. It's literally what the Rudra Malaya Tantra, the text in which the Vijnana Bhairava is found, it's literally what the title of the book means. Rudra Malaya Tantra can be translated as union of Shiva and Shakti. And so this text has even more text within this larger volume exists to help us experience this living state of being, this non-dual possibility where you can be in the world and be connected to your true nature at the same time. Now, the challenge is when you sort of have to shift your gaze a little bit and you start to interact with your life, which doesn't necessarily look like a deity. But if you can keep feeling inwardly the exact same way you were doing with the deity, well, that, we would call bringing our practice into our life. So let's take a moment to put this into practice. We're going to read a quote. You're going to seem like you're not looking at a deity anymore, someone, but you are. Trey, would you be in a position to, oops, I had a really cool slide for that. I'll go back to it in a minute, to read this quote for us?
Yeah.
Thanks.
When in one who enters the state of Shakti, i.e. one who is identified with Shakti, there ensures the feeling of non-distinction between Shakti and Shiva. Then that yogi acquires the state of Shiva, for in the Agamas, she, Shakti, is declared as the door of entrance into Shiva. Shakti is like Shiva's face.
Thanks, Trey. Awesome. We can believe this when we're looking at a Murti, a lineage teacher, etc., right? But we have to dig a little deeper when it's, your computer screen, or whatever you're interacting with the most. So I'd like to take a moment to give this a little bit more foundation so that we can see it from a little bit broader vantage point by talking about some fundamental principles of Kashmir Shaivism. So fundamental that they really, they sort of, you might say they're like the backbone of non-dualistic philosophy. And this is the concept of prakasha and vimarsha. Kat, are you in a position to read this one for us?
Kashmir Shaivism constructs a pure monism which assumes a single reality with two aspects. Prakasha, light, the principle of self-revelation, and Vimarsha, experience, the self-consciousness which brings about the world process.
Thanks, Kat. Okay, a pure monism, whichever way we say that, I'm not sure. So it'd be like a single universe, okay? Not dualistic, meaning like a God and everything else, but one single thing with two aspects and like two sides of a coin. One coin, two sides, etc. These two aspects are called prakasha, which is literally the light You can imagine it like literally light shining out from a light source like the sun or this flashlight, which I put on the bottom of the image. Or, oh, and I can help. Sorry for the folks in the room. I didn't have this quote up. And the other side of this coin is Vimarsha, which is it's called self-reflection. Just popping it up for the folks here in the room. Okay. And so that would be what the light bounces off of to sort of that we observe. Okay. So real quick, you remember this from science class? It was probably 8th grade. I don't know. But light, like for example, in your car at night when you're driving and it's rainy, it's wet out, and the ground is wet. You ever noticed how you can't really see the road that well? Sometimes you don't even know if your headlights are actually on. Everybody there with me, and you might know the science behind this. You know, Tejavon does. And you're like, are my lights on? Oh, yeah, they're on, because it got crazy there for a second when I turned them off or in the middle of a rainstorm. And the idea is that the light is bouncing off of the surface, this wet surface, and going forward. But normally, light is going to bounce off, or it's going to hit a surface, and a lot of that is going to reflect back to you. And the road that you normally see is all the light that is reflecting back to you while you're driving. And if you're into science, you're used to like stretching your brain like this and being like, oh, of course, yes, we like take these kind of things for granted. If you're not into science, you're like scratching your head right now, like, what? Which is how I felt when I first heard this, But the idea is that this reflection possibility is critical. Without anything reflecting back to you, for example, that light, if it had nothing to reflect back, you'd never see it or anything in front of you at all. It would be just darkness, even though there could be a huge sun shining right behind you. But if there's nothing for it to bounce off of, you would look like you're in space. You're just in complete darkness. Shakti is all of the things that reflect the light of Shiva back to us. If we didn't have all these manifestations, we would not perceive Shiva. And this is a challenging thing to wrap your mind around, because you're like, why wouldn't we just perceive Shiva? Why do we need these? Well, that I'm not going to spend the rest, that's probably a whole nother class. But the idea is all of these things that you see around you, all the experiences that you encounter, the tensions that you feel in your life, these are all moments when the light is bouncing back to you. These are actually times when you can experience your true nature. So all this manifestation, sure, it could become a distraction. There's no doubt about it. That's where we sort of start from. But as we employ our practice, objects and experiences actually become reminders. They actually encourage us. They remind us to use our practice. So this quote actually, I see a hand. Yes, Anandama.
Well, I loved that analogy of the light needing something to bounce on. That helped me a lot. But then I remembered, and I think it was in one of the Shiva Sutras, that you might have asked this question, maybe during a meditation: can you hold awareness without an object? So that's.
Yeah, great point.
That's what awareness is, right? Without the object.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like that would be the state of being we're seeking. And the preface will conclude by saying that the path is not Shiva, the path is Shakti. So like the path we must walk, which, if we remember, was the original question that inspired this entire dialogue. Parvati asked Shiva for the sake of discussion, not because she actually needed him to say so, because they're both enlightened. Or Shakti asked Shiva, what is the path we must tread? That was the big line. What is the path we must tread? What must we do? And it concludes by saying that Shakti is the path we must tread. And that middle path, the Shakti Upaya, you got the Shakti Upaya is like the whole way up the mountain. And the Shambhavu Upaya is when we can exist, like you said, in that state of being without necessarily relying on this external world to remind us. We can actually hold that awareness. But, I'm not there yet. I don't know how to comprehend that state. All I know is the path that's being laid out before us is Shakti. But we're not supposed to hang on to these techniques too desperately. We are wanting to arrive at a state of being. So thank you for bringing that up. And I did want to conclude with this. This is the end of the verse 20, because I was sort of saving it to conclude with. Gita, were you available to read this last part of verse 20?
Just as by means of the light of a lamp and the rays of the sun, portions of space, etc., are known, even so, O dear one, by the means of Shakti is Shiva, who is one own essential self, cognized, that is, recognized.
Thank you. Portions of space are known by means of Shakti. And it got a little confusing in there. Maybe I missed like a word. Shakti is Shiva. I think I might have missed something there. But nonetheless, you see this recognition is occurring. Shakti is reminding us of Shiva. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Sorry. Thank you. Shakti manifestation is here to remind us of Shiva, to help us recognize our true nature.
That is just a rephrase of the Kashmir Shaivism paragraph that you had up just a moment ago. It's just same thing, different words.
Yeah, it's like this is like the backbone of how our practice is possible. And yeah, I feel like we're sort of being given this like fundamental teaching. All in the preface. But obviously it's more than a preface. So we're going to pause there. We have class together next week. I want to finish by meditating together. We have about 15 minutes or so to sit. And we'll just literally pick up from here. And we're going to keep going. There's a little bit more, and we'll discuss where we're at. So feel free to shuffle around your seat a little bit and feel good for our sit. I should start by saying, go ahead and position yourself to be able to look at a sacred image, just to make it easier on yourself. So whatever you want to see in your shrine, it's okay if you're not facing the camera, any of that. So whatever is good for you. We'll take the first moment, of course, to just feel our seat. Feel it as balanced. We want to feel the spine as buoyant and light. The shoulders relaxed. The crown lifting ever so gently, as well as the heart, with no effort, really. And then finding your breath flow, making it steady and smooth with, again, minimal effort. And your gaze, of course, is natural and soft. It's a gaze that you feel you could sustain for hours if you needed to. In fact, your whole seat, your whole posture, your breath, and your gaze should all feel incredibly sustainable. And your eyes are resting on a manifestation of Shiva, a form of Shakti. This is a doorway, as the text says, a doorway to the experience that lies within us, a face of Shiva, a fire upon which we put the kettle, to pull in the last verse. And so feel that connection between this form of Shakti in front of you and your heart. That's what creates the doorway, is the two relating to each other. So see the form and feel your heart. The mind will drift, meaning your eyes might appear to be looking in the same direction, but somehow your awareness is not looking with it. And that's up to each of us to recognize and to work with skillfully, not heavy-handed, but to just feel that connection again between this external form and this internal experience. And like a tea kettle, it won't boil if you watch it, right? Which is another way of saying you have to be willing to do this many times like in a continuum. You can't just say, I'm doing it so this should occur, but rather you have to just invest in that direction. And what's nice about that is it means you can relax. You can play with the ability to do this practice and relax more and more and more. Allow your awareness to exist externally. You see the room you're in, you hear the sounds, you feel your body, and simultaneously stay connected to the experience of it all, your inner experience, by bringing your awareness to your heart, this observer. And take these last few minutes to allow your awareness to expand, to see even more of the room. And to feel inside with, what does this mean to say all of this is Shiva? Why does this matter? It's not just a philosophy. There's something important experientially about this process that no one can explain, but we can feel. You can let the eyes close for our last moments. Hopefully the practice was a catalyst to use your practice, and you just feel a little bit lighter because you practiced. And it's a good time to always remind ourselves that all of this philosophy is nothing compared to your practice, compared to the mechanism of your practice and the work of your surrender. That all of this is literally an instruction manual, and that we're meant to be the thing, that we're reading about. So with that, namaste. Hope you all have a great week playing with the material. I'm glad to hear it. Thanks, Gita. And I look forward to checking in with you next week. See how it goes. It'll be fun. See you then. Tara, thanks for coming. Sorry I didn't get to call on you tonight, but you'll be first next week.